Breathing Through Our Hearts, A Path to Restoring Our Humanity. And I chose this title because air is one of the many things that unites humans, all living beings. In 1% of an air molecule, there's an element called argon, and we can accurately calculate how many molecules of argon are in each breath of air.
Charla, can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. So that last breath you just exhaled will move around the room, then go outside, and then eventually across the whole world, and someone else will breathe it in. And that cycle continues. And in the air, the breath of air you just inhaled, you can calculate how many argon atoms are now in your lungs that were breathed by Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Adolf Hitler, Columbus, Sitting Bull, person sitting next to you. Also, each breath we take will provide air to sustain life in the future. We literally breathe the same air as everyone around the world. So that's the breathing part. And for the heart, researchers at the Heart Math Institute suggest that over the last 30 years, the health industry has taught us that we live in here, we live in our minds, but it's actually not true. We actually go through the world, if we're open to it, through our hearts. The heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So this would imply that our hearts are actually in control and not our logical brain. The heart emits a magnetic field that goes beyond our body, and when we pick up on someone else's magnetic field, we can be in tune with their heartbeat, and this can actually affect our whole physiology. In between heartbeats, we can tell what emotional state a person is in: love, anger, sadness, anything. Thus, emotions literally control the signal our heart emits. Positive states, including compassion, well-wishing, and love, promote health and renew our physiology. Positive emotions lead to increased inner harmony, clearer thinking, better performance. It's the mode that we were literally designed to work from. Our hearts want to be happy and they want to connect with people, and we can share in other people's emotions too. We can live in a state of empathy, compassion, and love, and we actually work better than that in a state of separation. So, breathing through our hearts, literally connecting with people, is how we stay alive. I think. This leads me to what my thesis is about, basically why we need to connect with others and what happens when we don't. Obviously, that's a huge topic. My thesis is 70 pages, so if you need to my mentors, you have to read it. Let me know if you want to. Anyways, I have paid attention to human interaction for as long as I can remember. Throughout my life, I was usually a very quiet person, so I was able to listen and watch people around me. As a cashier at a local grocery store in Maryland, I watched customers interact or not interact with each other and with me. I noticed a lot of people would even choose to go to self-checkout devoid of any human interaction at all. The grocery store represented a mini community to me, right outside of DC too, so I like to pretend it represents our country, but not really, I know. And in this community, I was surprised to see that most people did not talk to each other or even make eye contact. I was surprised to see that, just at that. Their interactions with me varied from asking me personal questions to negatively judging me or not looking at me at all, or talking on their phones, anything, really. Though there was definitely a wide variety of levels of interaction, I felt like it could all be deeper. I recognize that when people go to the grocery store, they're not looking for communication, conversation, connection. But I noticed that so many people acted as if the human beings right next to them were invisible. I grew fascinated with how we treat each other, especially in our mundane, everyday activities. We could all care about each other a little more. I became very passionate about how this could be accomplished, and I became my own case study. During my time in Uganda and Rwanda, I noticed a completely different community with totally different ways of interacting. I noticed that even though going to the markets was extremely overwhelming, there was a lot more interactions there. At every passion fruit table I walked by, a male or female would reach out to me. Sometimes they just wanted me to buy their fruit. Sometimes they just had questions to ask or just wanted to say hi, but I felt very welcome there. Customers talked among each other about their day, their family, what fruits looked good and what didn't, anything. It was really heartwarming to see so much communication among these beautiful, welcoming human beings. I'm aware that in East Africa, my role was a traveler and a white woman and not a cashier. So it was very different and out of place, but I noted that the majority of people who greeted me were Ugandans, and Rwandans. In fact, most of the people I met from the U.S. had no interest in me at all. In both of the East African cultures that I was so fortunate to experience, I noticed a true and genuine sense of community among the citizens. I was curious what was different in their communities from the communities in which I have lived, and then I realized it was community. My thesis explores what it might look like to restore our humanity in the United States, and why we should learn to see all people as part of us, as an integral part of our human race, and they're connected with the universe. I believe the quality of human interaction in this country is deteriorating among people, which contributes to loneliness, discrimination, human exploitation, and at the extreme, genocide around the world. I offer Ubuntu philosophy as a solution by shifting our society's focus from a more individualistic paradigm to a more communal emphasis. Researchers who've studied the U.S. society have concluded that many people see themselves as separate from others. Because of this, they end up distancing themselves from other people as a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. In this culture, many people are primarily focused on their own experience, and children are taught to achieve in competitive conditions. Being raised in this society personally, I have been taught to go to school, graduate from college, get a career, work for the rest of my life, that the higher paying job is the more successful and considered, and to start a family, but don't be a stay-at-home mom. I was taught this pattern of growing and aging as the image of success, and that economic success is the utmost priority. I was encouraged to achieve the American dream, to make as much money as I can and live the good life. When describing Western culture, Desmond Tutu writes, there is an obsession with achievement, and it seems it does not matter much in what you succeed as long as you do succeed. And our country seems to easily dismiss people as expendable and discardable when they do not contribute to our perceived image of success. We're encouraged to compete against others, to be separate from the pack, be number one, and win. It's a Tom Shady quote, not mine. We create education based on the notion that we're separate, and so we honor and enforce competition through honor rolls, dean's lists, spelling bees, which I won once. Grades and methods. We create our business environment similarly. We must perform well, or else risk someone else replacing us. We are exceedingly devoted to increasing profits. It seems there's no limit to how much capital businesses want to make. They simply want to get as much as they can. Institutionally, our culture is designed with the principle of needing to be significant at someone else's expense. We cannot have competition if there is no one to race against. Society tries to make us citizens passive and apathetic, but active as a maximizer of consumption. So after September 11th, the mantra of our country became go out and shop. It was basically promoting shop therapy to heal the nation's wounds. And we are taught that happiness is directly related to wealth. The more money and stuff we have, the happier we will be. To a certain extent, this is true. We need shelter or warmth from the cold, food, and water to even be able to survive. Before we can become sustainably happy, our basic needs must be met. However, we are taught, if this amount of stuff makes me happy, then more stuff will make me even happier. In reality, the difference in happiness between someone who makes $5,000 and $50,000 is pretty dramatic, but there's little to no difference in the person who makes $50,000 and $5 million. Interesting. Our circumstances, such as our income, social status, job, where we live, how old we are, only make up for 10% of our happiness. Research shows. I didn't make that up. I have noticed a disconnect among families in the U.S. It is common to leave home and go to college around the age of 18, which is the age that we are seen as adults, legally independent from our parents. Some people go to school close to home, while others run as far away as possible. Some people have parents who call every day, and some only talk to their parents on holidays. We are on our own after graduation, and if we come back to live with our parents after college, we are seen as unsuccessful or undateable. Some people are best friends. Some people are best friends with their siblings, while others feel like practically strangers. In my extended family of 9 siblings, I talk to about half of them on the phone a couple times a year. I recognize that we are all in different parts of the country and have busy lives, but I find it fascinating to see sort of people who I grew up with. They're supposed to know me best, but growing up, I was often told to appreciate my family because they're the only people in this world who have to love me. So why are some of us so distant from our families? When our parents get older, many of us place them into nursing homes to be taken care of by employees. They are not our responsibility. In many other cultures, this is not the case. A man named Hugo, who I interviewed from Mexico, told me that he and his family all live together, even though they migrated from Mexico. Now they live in Colorado. Him and his siblings won't move out of the house until they get married. And then when their parents get old, they live with them and take care of them. The roles of caretaker switch, and that is normal for them. Hugo's parents took care of him throughout his life, so it only makes sense for him to do the same for them when they need it. We have a culture in the U.S. that values keeping to ourselves. It seems to me that most people don't even know their neighbors anymore, including me. Out of 17 people I interviewed from the U.S., 14 said they rarely or never talk to their neighbors. Though I acknowledge this is only a small sample of people living in this country, I find it interesting that the majority of people said they have little to no contact with the people living right next door. I don't even make cookies anymore. In our culture's decreasing sense of community can lead to loneliness, which Emily was talking about earlier. Research shows that 40% of people in this country say they're lonely, and this number has doubled in the past 30 years. This loneliness can be lethal. Professor Kachopo, the director of the Center for Cognitive and Social Neuroscience, researched loneliness and found that loneliness weakens our immune systems, impairs sleep, increases our stress hormone, cortisol, and in too many cases has led to suicides. Also just leads to earlier death for unhealthy reasons. He believes humans are social beings who thrive in a collective, and that the pain and decline in health we get due to loneliness is a kind of early warning signal of a failure to connect. There's a shrinking sense of community. Too many people see too many people as the other, not a part of them. I am who I am, and they are who they are, whoever they are. People feel lonely but don't know why. Meg Wheatley says, "We seek consolation in everything except each other. It is as if we've forgotten the source of true contentment and well-being, each other." When we stop reaching out to people, we lose our human connections. This human disconnect also leads to stereotypes, assumptions, fears, exclusivity, or racism, homophobia, sexism, ageism, all the isms. This is what allows for oppression, sexual assaults, sweatshops, hunger, and all the worst human atrocities to happen. It might not always seem like a big deal when we other someone, but it adds up. In fact, genocide, which is defined as the deliberate killing of a large group of people, especially those of a particular ethnic group or nation, is the darkest form of othering. And genocide happens in 8 stages. The first one's classification, where we establish our differences from another so it becomes us and them, whether that be ethnicity, race, religion, nationality, income, anything, so othering. The second stage is symbolization, which is where we give symbols and names to the other. In the Holocaust, this would be making the Jews wear yellow stars. The third stage is dehumanization, where the other group is seen as less than human, so whatever happens to them doesn't matter. You can no longer empathize with them on a human-to-human level because they're not human. Thank you. The rest of the stages deal with killing the other groups in heinous, organized ways. Often the killings take place in mass amounts with no mercy. And then the final stage is denial, because the perpetrators don't see the other group as valuable people. They see they did nothing wrong. They might even think they did the world a better place. Made the world a better place. This is definitely extreme, but it is a subtle process. It doesn't take much to get there. Lema Bowie says, "Every time you act on a negative stereotype, you build a thin wall against the person. You deal with them as the object you've imagined them to be, not as a human." Over the summer of 2014, I spent July and August in Rwanda, where I thought I'd only be learning about peace and conflict. I learned more than that. Rwanda is the most densely populated country in Africa, with a population of 11.78 million people. It's about the size of Maryland, my home state. It's a beautiful country, appropriately known as the land of 1,000 hills. Rwanda used to be made up of 3 different ethnic groups, the Hutu, Tutsi, and Batwa. The Hutus made up about 84% of the population, while Tutsis made up 15%. It's important to mention that Rwanda never talked about ethnic differences until Belgian colonizers came in. In fact, before the colonizers came, people lived together as friends, neighbors, doing chores together, intermarrying among the ethnicities that didn't exist. This was the first stage of genocide, classification, and othering. The Belgians gave the Tutsi governmental power, even though they actually didn't get any of the real benefits of the elite, just the title and reputation. And with the Tutsis being the minority in power, I don't recommend that. Of course, the 84% of Rwanda's population is going to get upset. A rule was established that made Rwandan citizens carry identification badges that said their ethnicities on it. This was stage 2 of genocide, symbolization. Tensions continued to grow over the years, and there were many mass killings of Tutsis, but on April 6, 1994, the infamous genocide officially started, and it became a law to kill the Tutsis. People were killed if they were any part Tutsi or if they supported a Tutsi in any way. There was an official militia named Interahamwe who executed most of the mass murders. Most of the massacres ended on July 7, 1994, but 1 million people were killed in only 100 days. Rwanda lost half of their population to deaths and fleeing. Out of about 400,000 survivors, more than 50,000 became widows, and more than 75,000 became orphans. The population was 70% women. Every single person I met in Rwanda who was my age or older was affected during the genocide. The Tutsis and the Hutus were othering each other and not acting within, which I haven't explained yet, but Ubuntu philosophy. When rebuilding the country, a lot of relationships had to be mended. Now it's a law that the citizens can't talk about ethnic differences. It is even frowned upon to say Hutu or Tutsi in public. Rwanda's motto is Abanya Rwanda, which means we are Rwandan. That is their ethnicity. They have adopted an approach of unity. Abanya Rwanda reminds Rwandan citizens of the past and what happens when they separate themselves into groups. There is an effort towards building trust among Rwandans, regardless of what ethnic group they may fit into. I'm not going to read that right now. That'd be a minute. Okay. Well, there's like this family that I lived with, and they're really amazing, but ask me later. But I also got to meet this group, Ubutwari Wokubahu, which loosely translated means heroic will to live. And they're a group of women who are made up of the wives of survivors and the wives of the perpetrators of the genocide. The women told us that before the group formed, there was a lot of tension whenever the widows saw the perpetrators' wives. This is kind of confusing. I hope that I'm making sense. But the perpetrators' wives would bring food to their husbands in the prisons, and the widows would stop the wives, throw things at them, ruin the food, etc. The widows would terrorize the perpetrators' wives because they were so mad at what these women did, those women's husbands did to their own husbands. Confusing. The perpetrators' wives would retaliate by saying horrible things back to the wives, saying they were worthless, lonely, and should have died too. Both groups of women were Catholics, and the priest came to them telling them they were not acting faithfully if they were going to treat anyone that way. Eventually, the widows allowed the perpetrators' wives to come pray with them, and they both apologized for their behaviors and eventually formed their organization. They now work together to breed animals, grow produce to sell, make soap and jewelry. They have become friends and support to each other. They became the epitome of hope for Rwandan people, and eventually their impact was spread across Rwanda. Now about 2,000 people are part of their organization. They represent Ubuntu, which I will now explain. In South Africa, there's a philosophy called Ubuntu. After the apartheid ended in South Africa in the 1990s, Archbishop Desmond Tutu used the Bantu people's philosophy of Ubuntu to restore the citizens' relationships, community, and humanity. But it has been around way before the apartheid. Ubuntu translates roughly as humanity towards others, or I am because you are, or I need you in order to be me, and you need me in order to be you. The values are embedded in reconciliation, forgiveness, and sharing, which makes it appropriate for challenging the apartheid mentality. Ubuntu philosophy is recognized and practiced throughout various communities in Africa. We are on this earth because the community of two people happened. Sorry. Even before we were born, we were part of a human community. We learn how to be human through other humans. I would not know how to talk, walk, think, or eat if it wasn't for the people who taught me how to live. Since other people bring out different aspects of our personality, we can't be our full selves without people to invoke and reflect who we are, especially people who color us, show us the sides we didn't think we had. According to this philosophy, people truly need each other. In fact, Desmond Tutu declares, the completely self-sufficient human being is subhuman. He believes that in order to be human, we must be dependent. This sounds very different than the values of being independent that I feel are promoted in the U.S. People with Ubuntu are more concerned for the good of humanity than for just their own well-being. It teaches us to look beyond ourselves, and in so doing, to become more fully human. Ubuntu encompasses compassion, generosity, connection, respect, and ultimately showcases the best parts of humanity. People acknowledge their commonalities between each other, but they also appreciate the differences each person brings to make the whole. So I have gifts that you don't have, and you have gifts that I don't have, and we don't have to only give them on our birthdays. We are different in order to know our need for each other, and each one of our gifts is equally important to each other and the greater world. People teach others and they learn from others, and we see all humans as part of our family. A person with Ubuntu truly believes that every single person belongs in the world just as they are. A person with Ubuntu will greet others when they walk by on the street or in the market, and they embrace hospitality and they share what they have without worrying what they might get in return. This is also where the village raises a child comes in, because you don't just have one parent, everybody parents you. According to Ubuntu, people are only defined by the way in which they interact with other people in their community. They are a good person only if they act so towards others. Though I acknowledge that there are some people in this country who already do live within Ubuntu philosophy, especially at this school, I propose that the U.S. could benefit from Ubuntu philosophy in practice if we adopted it on a larger scale. The genuine essence of Ubuntu is that which is human, and no matter where we come from, we are all human. We are all capable of restoring our humanity among our fellow humans. It might sound like a utopian dream to try to incorporate Ubuntu into this country. I agree that it will come in steps. But the first step is self-love and self-exploration, seeing our basic goodness and other people's. We must learn who we really are, and then learn to love and respect ourselves before we can treat others with that same kindness. We must look at how our shadow side might be reflected upon others. I could talk about shadow the whole time, but I'm already done, so. I lost my shadow. We must look at how our shadow side might be reflected upon others and how to truly accept all the darkest parts of ourselves that we do not fully appreciate or know about. We also need to just reach out to people and have conversations. I've noticed that often when I walk on the street, I have my head down, not reading from my paper, but just down, to avoid conversations. I'm usually just shy and don't want people to see me. However, when I decided to challenge myself one day and keep my head up while walking home, I found that almost every single person I tried to greet had their heads down. And I wasn't going to be like, hello! They had me. Why not I do? Grandma! People can broaden their community when they add more people to it through starting conversations with those we've never spoken to before. It takes one person to start a conversation. We can choose to be that person. Conversation requires that we extend ourselves, that we open our minds and hearts a bit more, and that we turn to someone curious about how they live their life. It is truly a gift. Margaret Wheatley says, when we don't talk to each other, we give up our humanity. We need a simple, honest, human conversation. It doesn't have to have any motive or agenda. We just need to talk. However, that is easier said than done. I mean, how many times have you said, like, how are you? I'm good. Okay, thanks, bye. And like, do you even, I mean, personally, it's like an automatic response. So it has to be honest, but other than that, what we say is not that important, as long as we just say something at all. Okay, can't read this, not enough time. Wouldn't it be great if we learned more about the other, the people in our life who we don't choose to include? I think our life would only benefit if we added more people to love. Why don't we start by asking a classmate or a coworker or a family member how their day is, or asking if they want to get lunch, inviting them to your life, even if they've been there all along. Or could you please introduce yourselves to the person next to you on both sides? What do you have to lose? Definitely not human connection. You can shield your heart against any kind of trouble, any kind of horror, but the simple act of kindness from a complete stranger will unstitch you. And then maybe they won't be such a stranger anymore.